If we must grind up human flesh and bones in the industrial machine that we call modern America, then before God I assert that those who consume the coal, and you and I who benefit from that service because we live in comfort, we owe protection to those men first, and we owe the security for their families if they die. I say it, I voice it, I proclaim it, and I care not who in heaven or hell opposes it.
Millions of years ago, a spark was set with the formation of a sedimentary rock called coal. This seemingly mundane rock would later be the catalyst for the largest labor uprising in the history of the United States. This battle, the Battle for Blair Mountain, was instrumental in uniting many of the surrounding people under color, class, and creed. While coal was always present in the United States, dating back to before the Civil War, it was during and after the Civil War that the use of coal was really utilized to its full potential. In West Virginia, coal was the main export and job producer. It provided many jobs to the existing families from early America, but also provided many jobs for African American families and newly arrived immigrants. Many of these newly arrived black and immigrant men would become very influential leaders for the community and the Union. With all of the people of different color and ethnicity, all working down in the mines, it formed a solidarity between the workers. After all, they were all the same color down in the coal mine. One of these leaders was a man that went by Dan Fewcloth Chains. He was an African American miner that was very influential in the Union for leading an earlier strike at Cabin Creek in 1913. He was arrested, jailed, but eventually pardoned. This fervent and brash attitude made him a very popular leader in the local United Mine Workers chapter, and a very popular figure in the African American side of the Union. Another extremely influential figure was an elderly woman that went by Mother Jones. She was also present at the Cabin Creek strike, helping sabotage railroads and leading groups, but she was also known for her great speaking powers and the ability to rally men to the cause of unionism. She also gave women a voice in unionism by speaking to and of the wives of miners. Now, with all of these people working together, living together, and dying together, it once again brought an unbreaking solidarity and bond between them, no matter their race nor ethnicity. But what led to the tinderbox that was Blair Mountain? While the grudges of the battle could go back centuries, the main reason was the end of the First World War. This meant the government didn't need as much coal as before, while also being outcompeted by other fuel markets. So in return, the company cut workers' wages. This sparked a wider unrest in the southernmost counties, Logan, Mingo, and McDowell. Some miners unhappy with this recent development attempted to set up a UMW chapter in their county, but many of these miners were fired. To discourage UMW membership from increasing, the companies hired private detective agents under the Baldwin Felts organization. These agents would patrol the streets, terrorizing miners' families by firing at them and into their own houses. Then, on May 19th, 1920, 13 Baldwin Felts agents arrived in the town of Mattawan with an arrest warrant issued for the capture of the police chief Sid Hatfield. Sid Hatfield countered the detectives, said that he in turn had a warrant for their arrest, and declared that they leave the town. Then, the mayor claimed that the agent's warrant was fraudulent. This kicked off a gun battle between the two parties, which would leave 10 dead, 3 miners, and 7 agents. This was dubbed the Mattawan Massacre, and this led to more acts of violence between the mine guards and miners. Sid and all of the other miners were later acquitted of any wrongdoing. This would leave the detectives with a seething rage, which would culminate on August 1st, 1921. Sid Hatfield and an accomplice, Ed Chambers, would travel to McDowell County for a trial for another shooting. They were met by Felts detectives and were shot dead on the McDowell County Courthouse. With news of the two being killed spreading across the districts, for many of the miners this was the final straw. While Sid's funeral was being held and over 2,000 attendants showed up, many of the other miners were planning to march into the neighboring Mingo and Logan counties to forcefully set up their union there. Although, without the blessing of Mother Jones, who feared a bloodbath was inevitable, The miners were under the command of Bill Blizzard, a fiery leader who would lead the miners on the march to Blair Mountain. But almost as everything was about to kick off, the then sitting president, Warren G. Harding, threatened to send in federal troops to put an end to this. After this threat, in a long talk in the town of Madison, just north of the eventual battle scene, many of the miners were eventually convinced to go home. But not all sides wanted this to end this quickly. On the company's side was Don Chafin, the sheriff of Logan County. He had just assembled an army of 2,000 well-entrenched police and private soldiers, and he would not be denied the chance to upend Union activity once and for all. Within hours of the miners' decision to go home, there was rumors that some of Chafin's men had shot Union sympathizers, and that many families were caught in the crossfire. With this rumor being spread around, it convinced many of the miners to turn right back around to the mountain to fight the company. With this development, heavier fighting began to take place on August 29th, and miners began to engage with private deputies. For the next 5 days, from September 1st to the 5th, fierce fighting was centered around 4 points of conflict: Crooked Creek, Mill Creek, Beach Creek, and Blair Mountain. Within this industrial inferno of World War I era tactics and company planes dropping bombs, there was a black, white, and immigrant redneck army all banded together for the cause of unionism.
This Blair Mountain was a moment of solidarity across ethnicity and race, and this meant immigrants, it meant African Americans, and it meant white people that were born in that holler,
Moreover, about 2,000 of the 9,000 miners present at Blair were African American, and many of these men bravely took up the mantle to fight against the tyrannical company guards and scabs for their white and immigrant comrades. This was also in the face of mounting racial violence in southern West Virginia, and also just 1 month after the Tulsa Race Massacre. Women were very instrumental to the battle as well. While mostly overlooked, many of the miners' wives would volunteer as nurses, set up in little army hospitals in some of the towns surrounding the fighting, and helped with the cooking of meals for soldiers, and some were even journalists reporting to the rest of the U.S. on the battle.
There was a long history of women supporting unionization in the coal camps that made any of this possible. Because throughout the unionization efforts, women lived in the tent colonies as wives and mothers and daughters. And because when they got evicted, they all got evicted.
Then, on the 3rd of September, many federal troops entered the areas of fighting and ordered the miners to stop. Many of the miners were veterans of World War I, so they did not want to fight with their own army, and about 2 days later, all serious fighting had ended. After the end of the battle, and the protracted legal battle for months after, the miners were forced to surrender their weapons, and many of them were tried with treason and terrorism charges. The Union was left decimated and scattered. Union membership plummeted from about 50,000 in West Virginia alone to just 600 members whole.
See that the miners were defeated and the unionization effort failed. And in fact, union effort in a lot of states failed after this, because after they defeated the miners of Blair Mountain, there were strikes in 1922 in Pennsylvania and Ohio as companies were trying to break the union. And these were dark days for the United Mine Workers.
But this was not the end of the UMW in West Virginia. After this long decade of almost no union activity in the entire state of West Virginia, then sitting President Franklin Delano Roosevelt passed the National Industrial Recovery Act in 1933. This made recruitment never any easier, and membership jumped to around 80,000 just months after the signing of the act. Not only did the Battle of Blair Mountain help drive union efforts to the rest of West Virginia eventually, it also left many anti-segregation sentiments. Since many of these men had lived together and fought together, many of the white miners did not feel a need to put up with segregation. And in fact, only one county was opposed to forced reintegration, and it was not a coal town.